If this is your first time here, I'm Nedra The Seer, and I am a Indigo Starseed in all the ways. And for those of you who don't know, this is the Arcturus thread. This is a thread back to me, back to you, back to us. And I am a gifted being with a direct line to the divine, right? And so when you come on to listen to me in this podcast and hear me ramble in all the ways, this is not just me sharing stories. This is not just me sharing knowledge. This is not just me sharing my gifts, but this is actual light activation because my throat chakra is very activating. And so when you come here to listen, you get a lot more than just stories. You get activation, you get spiritual awakening, and you get an uptick in your frequency because that's what I provide as the light being that I am, right? We are all energetic nodes of energy. We all carry a frequency that is unique to us, and everybody's frequency has the ability to do different things. And if you are a light worker here to help raise awareness and frequency for New Earth, then you have the ability to shift energy any and everywhere you go. So your light isn't just a gift to you. Your gifts aren't just a gift to you, but they are a gift to humanity itself, right? That's why we all have been assigned our own personal grids. There are many of you who have grown up in small towns, small environments, or maybe you've grown up in big cities with very jaded, dense environments where the energy feels very heavy, right? And that's very common for a light worker, a star seed, whatever you want to say, right? A gifted being. Usually we find that Earth is a very heavy experience for us, and usually a heavy experience for our Trinity, right? And the Trinity isn't just the Mother, the Father, and the Son, right? And more specifically, the Black Sun, but it is the mind, body, and soul. And usually all three of those components of our existence have a very hard time here on Earth because Earth is one of the most dense planets. And when you come here as a light worker, and your akasha starts to rise and you start to remember who you are, what you are, and why you are, but more so specifically why you are here, you realize that there's a reason why you always felt, excuse me guys, I'm still waking up, out of place and out of pocket amongst communities and different environments. And a lot of times star seeds find that no matter where they go, they never quite fit in, right? And that is not mere happenstance. I say this all the time, but that is mere divine design. You are highly sensitive, high energy, high light body, right, in motion, and you have been planted specifically and deliberately, right, due to divine purpose, prophecy, and the soul contract that you carry. You've been placed in a specific grid that needs the energy and the light body that you carry. And usually you will find that wherever your grid is, in terms of the ley lines, the Earth's frequency there is very dense due to the environments and the people, because everybody aids in the Earth's frequency, right? When we talk about the Schumann resonance is basically just the Earth's heartbeat, the core of the Earth, right? And when you think of your own sort of anatomy and physiology, right, you think about your heart chakra, right? Your heart holds the most electromagnetic energy in your vessel. That's why when your heart is thrown off and the frequency is thrown off and you inquire a heart chakra blockage, right, your electromagnetic energy shifts and it depletes. You find that your entire vessel is thrown off because everything is connected to the heart, right? And the heart cannot, if the heart is not functioning adequately, one, your vessel will not function adequately in terms of the physiology, but also in terms of your manifestation capabilities, right? Your gifts will be thrown off and you will not be able to attract, right? Because think about it, attraction is magnetism. The heart is a magnet, right? In order for me to manifest something, I have to reach a state of heart-brain coherence, right? And usually when the heart is thrown off, then there are other energetic meridians that will be thrown off as well. So usually when your heart is thrown off, it blocks you so that you cannot attract or magnetize the things in that you want to. And if and when you do attract things, it will be of a lower threshold because the heart is now of a lower threshold. That's why most times when entities, and I use the word entity deliberately, when entities enter your field and they want to distort you, your frequency, your manifestation capabilities, and overall your overall inception, they usually attack two things: your mind and your heart, right? And this will look like psychic attacks. This will look like love bombing, then withdrawal, then negativity, and they'll try to break your heart in some sense. They'll try to break your mind and sort of block your intuition, and more so block your cognitive capability to understand that your eyes are never failing you, right? Because we always see what we see, but we don't always trust what we see. And so this is why when people come into your inception to harm you, they always attack two centers, that is the mind and the heart, because those are the very things you need to experience a higher reality, a high frequency reality, and more so a reality that is of your liking, of your creating, right? And so when you tie this back to the earth, you think of the Schumann resonance, which we know has been toggling for quite some time during these periods of awakening. And the Schumann resonance has been sort of toggling up and down because we've been toggling up and down, because when we go through spiritual awakening, we have to reach a state where the new frequency that we inherit due to the rise of consciousness and the rise of our energy body, right, your light body, it has to reach a place of coherence where you have completely sort of recalibrated, and now you are holding the line. And usually before we hold the line, we toggle up and down due to shadow work, due to entities entering our field, projecting energy onto us, and different things, to where the frequency waves don't hold, right? And so when our frequency isn't holding, her frequency isn't holding. And when I say her, I mean Mother Earth, Mother Nature, Mother Gaia, right? And so often when you are in a space and you feel it's very dense and it's very depleting to your energy body, as a highly sensitive, gifted divine being, it usually is, right? This is everybody's experience on this journey to awakening and to purpose and destiny and different things. You will find that the Earth's heartbeat, the Schumann resonance, acts a lot like your heartbeat. So when you are in these grids, and the grids we are assigned to are always filled with density at the energetic level to the core of the earth, it's not just our actual space, our home, our work environments, these relationships, these different communities and organizations and all these different things, but you will find that the actual grid there is poisoned, it's depleted. And so that's why a lot of times you don't realize that you're being called to ground a lot more frequently. And that's because grounding helps you, right? It helps you to be balanced. It also helps your energy body. But there is a sort of symbiotic relationship that people aren't always aware of. When I go to ground and I kick my shoes off and I put my feet in some dirt, I'm not just sucking up energy from the earth's core to replenish and balance out my body, but I'm putting energy back into her. So there's a symbiotic relationship to where we are helping one another. It's kind of like, I want you to think of it this way. Let's say I'm sad and I'm down, and I am currently in a room with somebody else that's sad and down. Let's say somebody has crossed over. A lot of times humans look at death from a 3D perspective, right? So let's say I'm sad and there's another family member in the room that's sad. Often a way that we will help each other, in a way that's unconscious, to help each other's emotional body, we may give each other a hug. And let's say I'm hugging my family member and we're both sad, we're both sobbing, we both have a distorted frequency due to the emotion, right? Energy and motion, but the emotion that we are feeling that is currently dragging both of our fields, because the emotion is of a lower threshold. We are sad, we are depressed, we are in a lower frequency, and we are acting out of the lower chakras due to the emotions that we feel. When we come together and we hug, there's a symbiotic experience happening to where we are swapping energy and we are uplifting each other, not just physically, but energetically. The same thing happens with the earth for the grid worker. When the grid worker puts their feet in the soil, there's a symbiotic exchange. When the grid worker wraps their arms around a tree, there's a symbiotic exchange. And so that's how we are healing Mother Gaia and healing our grid. And a lot of times, you will find that you cannot stay planted in one spot in your grid, right? And there are a lot of times that we are called to do things that are just abnormal or not something that we would think to do. And we don't understand like why we are so nomadic in origins, right? Why is it that, okay, I went to this job, I stayed here for about a year, now I'm being called to this job. And there's some that don't stay at a job for 6 months. And from the 3D perspective, it may look like, oh, this person is lazy or this person is non-committal or this person just always has to be moving around. But that is true for a grid worker. A grid worker isn't just responsible for that origin of the grid that they hold, that they exist in, that they live in. Often the grid worker is being called to be nomadic because they are doing energy work. And often the grid worker is not aware of that at first. The grid worker will just move around, and sometimes they will think, shit, I am flighty as fuck. I see what y'all mean about me. Like, I can't stay put, right? But it is a lot deeper than that, and it's always spiritual. And I tell you guys all the time, everything holds spiritual origins. If you want to know how to move through the earth and how to be successful on this planet, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And Tesla said this best, right? But you also have to think in terms of spiritual origins or spiritual nature, because everything holds spiritual components. And due to the culture of indoctrination and programming and these systems that have been put in place, people have drifted away from that understanding, and they don't realize that that was done intentionally, right? Because the more I can get you to disconnect from your spirit, higher spirits, right? The spirits that cover your bloodline, the spirits that are of your ancestry, right? The ancestors, the spirit guides, and the angels, I can keep you disconnected at the conscious level, right? To where your soul is off and the only thing on is your mind and your body. But when the soul is cut off from the vessel, the mind and the body don't function adequately to where it makes you the perfect slave at the energetic level, right? To where I can get you to be more agreeable. I can get you to doubt yourself. You will lack discernment because discernment is something that is a byproduct of spirit. In order for me to be able to discern adequately, I have to be in tune with the God or goddess in me, but I have to be in tune with the divine source energy, right? Higher consciousness, higher realms of consciousness, right? If I'm not in tune with the ethers, then discernment is not going to be something that I can grasp hold of anyway, right? Even if I have the ability to understand that my body is trying to help me discern something, that's what happens when you spot a red flag. A red flag is an indicator that discernment is trying to come through about a person, place, or space. But often we ignore those red flags because we are not in tune with spirit. That's why when you start to awaken and go through the journey and you step into higher consciousness, discernment becomes your number one tool, to where you will find that the more you tap in with yourself, the God within, and the beings that cover you, this is your angels, ancestors, spirit guides, and ET beings, higher beings, right? You will find that discernment is your number one tool, to where the discernment will rise and it might not even be clear right away. Like, my vessel is saying some fuck shit is going on. I don't even need to know what. Just going to trust it and remove myself. Or somebody may enter your field, and this has happened to me a lot recently, and this is going to happen to a lot of you, especially those of you who are going through spiritual awakening in real time, and especially those of you who are on the second awakening, the second big grand awakening, right, that many of us are on right now. You will find that there are a lot of people entering your fields because they want to get a hold of your loose. And because you have broke off karmic debt, broke karmic cycles, and you recognize your own bullshit in terms of pattern recognition, these entities, these beings, these demonic groups and different things, they can't get to you in the way they used to. A lot of times they'll come in through your lovers. They'll come in through your friendships. They'll come in through your work assignment, and that is all by divine design. They'll come in through your neighbors, right? And a lot of times you will find that you're meeting the same people, places, and spaces in different avatars and different forms. And that's because lower level spirits, right, or sometimes high ranking demons, they hijack vessels, right? They jump bodies. So when Tyrone showed up, and he been dogging you out since 1992, but then you finally caught on to Tyrone's patterns, and you started to trust your intuition and your discernment, you let Tyrone ass go, and then you glowed up and showed up, and then Tyrone went on to be the parasite that he is with another individual. Somebody else may have come in years later after Tyrone, but because you started to recognize the patterns, you might have let them in, but then you find that they didn't stay long enough. So the relationship that you would have held for 7 years and had the 7 years of bad luck now can't even stay 7 months. Then when you get better and better, it can't even stay 7 business days. And then when you really get on your shit, Tyrone won't even last 7 hours or 7 minutes, because you'll see him coming and you'll be like, I rebuke it, baby. Not doing it, right? You see the patterns and you trust the patterns. Your intuition starts to rise and you trust the intuition. But I'm going to tell you what this looked like for all beings. You don't have to be tapped in with the ethers. You don't have to be tapped in with your higher self. Your gifts can be completely dormant. And I don't believe that anybody's gifts is completely dormant. So let me rephrase that. Your gifts can be dormant adjacent, right? Like they're not dormant, but they're not active enough to where you can act out of them in a certain way or see certain things, and that happens to a lot of people who are what we consider to be sleeper cells. They haven't gone through awakening. They're acting out of ego, right? Acting out of worldly sort of perspective and processes, right? Even those beings that you consider to be completely asleep, they still have the ability to do this, because even when the spirit is turned off, it's still active in ways that we sort of overlook, right? And what this will look like is Tyrone will enter your field and a bitch will feel sick to the stomach, like literally sick, and you don't know why all of a sudden you feel like you want to throw up. You're having brain fog, headaches. Then, if you're really lucky, you'll get what is known as butterflies, right? Bitch, anxiety has woken up in you, and you'll say, oh my God, Tyrone, I know him from a past life. Bitch, you do. Trust it, right? But you might not really even know that much. You might just recognize that Tyrone is a familiar spirit in terms of like, I feel like I really know him. I've unlocked this energy to where me and Tyrone are just hitting it off instantly. And even with that instant connection, you will feel sick, you will feel thrown off, right? And you will start to feel those butterflies. And anytime you feel those butterflies, it's not just anxiety, but it is your vessel communicating to you what the spirit would communicate fully if you were tapped into the spirit, right? And so a lot of times when you're not tapped into the spirit, you don't realize that the spirit is still working, right? Even when the soul is off or not awakened or not aligned, it still has the ability to communicate things to you. And guys, you may hear background noise. I am literally recording this in my car while I'm driving, but I am safe. I have a phone holder and I can literally just hit the record button and do my thug thistle. So you may hear me driving, you may hear my car. That is the noise you hear in the background. For those of you that are sensitive to sound, um, I do apologize for that. I will try to use a tool that can kind of cut out the background noise, but if I can't, I will be uploading this like this. And this is just me walking in my truth. This timeline is calling me to create all the things that my spirit is calling me to create, because that is my purpose on this earth. That is everybody's purpose, right? We are all divine creation and divine creators. And so this is just me being truthful to my process. And so this might not be the in-depth time or the adequate time, but for me, I'm always on time. If my spirit tells me to do something and do it a certain way, then I'm doing what I need to be doing, and that's just a byproduct of being divinely guided. But I'm going to get back to what I was saying, because I will go on a tangent or two or three, right? And that is a byproduct of the ADHD, baby. I will go and go and go. I can tell 25 stories in 25 seconds, and I originally came to tell one story. It is a gift and a curse, I promise you. But the point I'm trying to make is that the spirit is always communicating things to us, even when it is not awakened. And I don't believe that the spirit is ever really truly dormant completely. I believe that it is just more so saturated with noise and energy that doesn't serve it, right? So it's more so like it's never really fully asleep, but it can be intoxicated with frequencies and energies that don't serve its rise and full awareness, right? The spirit has to be able to rise into its true threshold, but to do so, often you need silence, you need time with yourself, and you also need to be activated. And a lot of times we are activated through karmic experiences, and that is not a mere byproduct or happenstance. That's why when you talk to any awakened, enlightened being, they usually will have stories of karmic catalysts. And I'm going to be sharing more about this, because a lot of times people get on this journey and they get so stuck in that process because they don't recognize that that is not mere happenstance. That is divine design. Before we came here, we not only carry a soul contract due to purpose and destiny, but we carry many contracts within a contract, right? So it's literally like we have the overall soul contract, but then we have many independent contracts within that contract that is the basically the catalyst for how we rise fully into our spirit, into our God body, to be the divine creation that we are. And we are always that creation, but a lot of times we are not in tune with it. We don't remember it, right? And so these independent contracts help you to rise and realign, because again, I don't believe the spirit is ever truly cut off. You know, when you think in terms of cutting off your consciousness, I don't believe that consciousness is ever really completely cut off. I think we get sort of pings or hits that are indicative to higher consciousness, but a lot of times because the indoctrination is so thick and your frequency has become jaded, by many things, including archonic attachments and frequencies and different things, that we ignore the higher consciousness when it's trying to rise. And that's why spiritual awakening is a gift, because you can't ignore that whether you want to or not, right? When you are going through a spiritual awakening, what goes down must come up. So everything that you have suppressed in terms of frequency, vibration, higher consciousness, higher awareness, higher light, a high potency in your gifts, all of that will rise, and it will be against your will, right? And once you start to climb Jacob's ladder in real time, which is that good old activated 12-strand DNA, you start to tap in with your angels, ancestors, and spirit guides. And then you start to recognize all the occult aspects in your life. And now when I say occult, the 3D mind will say, oh, bitch, that's demonic. That's evil. That's all these things. But the word occult simply just means hidden. And I told you guys this the other day, like when you go to the doctor and they say you have fecal occult. That's hidden properties, often blood and parasites and different things that are in the stool. Occult just simply means hidden. I can say you have occult aspects in your relationship with Tyrone, demonic ass. And when I say that, that just means that you have hidden aspects of your relationship that you haven't awakened to. And often the occult aspects of the relationship are going to be the soul contract's origins, right? Because usually a low vibrational being will enter your field and they'll do all the things, and you will become victimized, right? And you will hold a victim mentality. And that's not to say that you have not been a victim, but you're not meant to hold a victim mentality, because these karmic catalysts come in to help your rise. I share with you guys all the time. I've been sharing for about 2 years now what was my karmic experience for me to rise in a way that was diabolical. And when I first started going through this awakening, not this current awakening, but the awakening that cracked me open and basically took my gifts from like 7 to 7,000, I was activated by a karmic catalyst. And I thought today I would share the Nephilim story, and I think I am going to share that story later on today, but I want to share this story first because I want to give you guys an in-depth understanding of how these things go. For those of you who don't know, my name is Nedra The Seer. You may know me from TikTok, which is Down the Rabbit Hole Seer, or Down the Rabbit Hole 888, and I share a lot of spiritual, psychological, and metaphysical content, right? About, you know, spiritual aspects of living, scientific aspects, psychology based sort of ideologies that also tap in with spirituality, because psychology is spirituality in a sense, right? I talk about the laws of the universe, metaphysics. I talk about all these different things, and I basically just go down deep rabbit holes of exploration of my own psyche, my own trinity, my own experiences as a indigo child, as a light worker in real time, a person with prophetic gifts in all the ways. And I also go down the deep rabbit hole of society and what these processes look like for people like me, but also the opposition, people who hold lower frequencies, who are operating out of the lower chakras and are more so our karmic catalysts, right, for activation. And the reason I say they're karmic catalysts, because often you just hear them labeled as karmics. But karmic energy can be good or bad, right? You have people who walk in just lower karma, and that is the negative karma that you hear about. But then you also have people who experience high vibrational karma, which is also known as dharma, right? And for a lot of light workers, you experience dharma. I experience a lot of dharma, especially with the soul work that I do, the work that I do in the ethers, the work that I do here on earth to help uplift humanity. I always have dharma returning to me. even when I'm going through the worst of the worst, I understand that it's not really bad. So I can always shift my perspective because I know what I came here to do. And I also remember my soul contract on this earth, thanks to my Akashic records. When you open up your Akashic library, this journey gets a lot easier because you will know the unknown, you will see the unseen, and you have a database that you can tap into to where when Tyrone shows up and that low vibrational ass energy, you will recognize that, hey, this is not only a familiar spirit, but I've known you before. I've known you in a past life. You aren't only here trying to fuck some shit up in real time, but you have done this before in a past life. And in a past life, you were successful, but this is a timeline where I will call my energy back, right? Step in my sovereign power and shift the timeline to where it is meant to be. And that is the byproduct of the divine feminine awakening, right? Because these divine feminine energies are all dealing with warlock experiences, but they don't know why. They're all dealing with narcissistic experiences, but they don't know why. And so a lot of times you have to remember, and once you remember, you can kind of move through the ethers and the 3D in a different way to where you can be successful with going through these soul contracts in the way that you intended to. And the way was always to get back to your original soul blueprint, the original frequency that you held prior to your incarnation, because as soon as you exit the portal, you have amnesia. You will have the gifts and the light, but you won't really remember or remember in full aspects of what you are, who you are, what you can do. And then these gifts will sort of rise, you know, against your will, and a lot of times we fight them in the beginning. But the goal of every contract that you have here on this earth is to evolve, and to evolve into the higher self, the God or the goddess within, because you have been taught to look outside yourself. You've also been taught to worship a false god, right? You've been taught a lot of different things, not realizing that you aren't just a fraction of source, but you are a god or a goddess in real time, right? And to a lot of people who don't know these truths, that can sound like narcissism, that can sound like psychosis, that can just sound like, bitch, you got it all wrong. But if you know, you know, and if you don't, I can only tell you, right? And so a lot of times we go through these soul contracts and we don't hold an in-depth understanding of what they are and why they are. And so usually the being that has started the enlightening process and you start to waken up, you usually have to go through a few of these karmic contracts before you can break out of the karmic loop and see it for what it is. And in the beginning, you will feel like a victim because usually you will be victimized, smeared, targeted, lied on, stolen from, physically harmed, spiritually harmed, right? Psychologically harmed. You will just go through all the things, and it can feel like, woe is me. Like, why am I going through all these things? And this morning I was listening to somebody, and she was channeling the Michael Jackson song, and he says, why? Why do they do me that way? And then he says, tell them that it's human nature. Why? And the irony is, Michael Jackson was an Indigo Starseed, and a lot of people saw the performer, the gifted being. They didn't see that he was sensitive to energy. They didn't see that he showed up with agape love. They didn't see that he was one of the first people to be targeted and smeared in the open. And a lot of times we didn't know what it looked like because a lot of people believe the stories in the media about him, and oh, maybe he did harm those children and all these different things, and all those things were lies. Michael Jackson was incapable of doing those things. He was also an Indigo Starseed who had a soul contract with karmic caregivers, right? His father, Joe Jackson, was very abusive, very controlling, wanted to control him and his gifts. And he came here to break that karma off of that lineage, right? And so a lot of times people saw the entertainer, the gifted being, the wealthy person, but they didn't see the spiritual being. They didn't see that Michael Jackson was being smeared and targeted and stalked, gang stalked, and all these different things in the public. They dragged him through the media, and it's a reason why he always was calm. He showed up in love and light. He didn't seek revenge. He always spoke with this soft-spoken voice, and a lot of times his kind heart and loving soul made people think that he was naive, but Michael Jackson was highly intelligent. He wasn't just musically intelligent, but he was spiritually intelligent. And he didn't just come here to be the great performer that we all got to know, but he was also a spiritual being that was uplifting generational curses off of his lineage. because him and his siblings all knew a lot of trauma at the hands of their father, Joe Jackson, but Michael Jackson was the chosen vessel of his bloodline, right? And a lot of times people don't realize that the chosen vessel isn't just the one that's gifted or the most gifted, because when you look at him and his family, he comes from a complete line of gifted, beautiful beings. His siblings are all beautiful people, all extremely talented. We look at the fact that two icons came from one bloodline. We got Janet Jackson, who is still amazing in real time, and we have Michael Jackson. But what people don't realize is that Michael Jackson didn't just come here with a soul contract to be one of the greatest performers that have ever lived and will ever grace this dense realm. He came here to be a generational curse breaker. And what that looked like is many things. When you go watch the movie, you can see the aspects of his indigo soul. You see it when you see all the different animals, and he has like a damn zoo inside of his house, right?